Hello, my name is Emily Vito, and I am the Assistant Director of Development at Film at Lincoln Center. Together with Netflix, we are thrilled to present a conversation about the film Giving Voice, featuring directors James Stern and Fernando Villena, executive producers Constanza Romero and Julius Tennon, film subject Freedom Martin, and moderated by author, journalist, and essayist Janice Littlejohn. Before we get started, I'd like to take a quick moment to thank our friends at Netflix for making this conversation possible. I'd also like to thank everyone viewing this presentation for being a member of Film at Lincoln Center, and to welcome our guests joining us from Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. We're looking forward to sharing lots of wonderful films and programming with you in 2021, including the New York African Film Festival happening now through February 14th, a new restoration of Olivier Assayas's Demon Lover opening on February 12th, and Rendezvous with French Cinema opening on March 4th. Please stay tuned to your email and visit our website for more details about becoming a member to save on screenings and support independent film. With that, I'm happy to turn it over to Janice.
Thank you so very much, Emily. And thank you to everyone joining us here. I want to jump right into things. And first, I'll be asking a series of questions for each of you. And then we'll go on for about a half hour, and then we'll open it up to the audience Q&As. So I'm going to start first with you, Jim, and ask you a little bit about Giving Voice. It focuses on a competition, but the film is less about the competition, but the legacy of August Wilson. And so I was curious, what was the inspiration for the way you wanted to approach this project?
Well, thanks. First of all, it's great to be here, and I love Lincoln Center, and Fernando and I had the great privilege of actually screening a prior film here at Lincoln Center, Every Little Stuff, which was really one of our great nights. So very, fortunately and incredibly luckily, Constanza had seen that movie and had reached out to me first about doing this as a feature doc. And I talked to Fernando, and he said, "This is a great idea. It gives us a chance to make a competition movie, which is not a competition movie." And that was incredibly appealing to me because I'm a huge fan of August. I first, actually, not to date myself, but to date myself, I actually saw Fences not only with Viola and Denzel, but actually with James Earl Jones. So I go way back, and it blew me through the theater. And I thought, my God, why is he not in the same conversation as Arthur Miller and Eugene O'Neill and Tennessee Williams and people like that? He needs to be. I thought that back then. So when Constanza called, I was completely thrilled. And then with sort of, with what Fernando had said in my head, I went to Seattle, and Constanza and I sat down and I talked about how we can make this movie and give voice to August and raise awareness of his legacy. I'm also somebody who loves writing. I love writers, and so the idea that I could sort of focus on his process in addition to focusing on acting was also really appealing. And so we had to, we approached the film with that in mind, and then tried to strike a balance, between, obviously the spine of the movie is the competition, but also to, to do right to August and Constanza, and who brought us here.
So speaking of that, Constanza, could you talk a little bit about the film being set at the 10th anniversary of the August Wilson Monologue Competition? Was it always your intention to make a film about it? Because it seems like a perfect time, marker to do a film for its 10th anniversary.
Yeah, I had not really thought about the film aspect of the monologue competition until it became so it became sort of a phenomenon. Every single arts organization that saw the monologue competition wanted to be part of it, and of course arts education is so needed for so many young people, and then before the film, it was something that it spread like word of mouth, but it was very desirable to be part of it all throughout the country. Now with this documentary, I think that people are going to be even more interested. But I think that more than anything, I just really realized that the power of August's words mixed with the hopes and the dreams of young people was going to be something just it was going to have a spark. And I really thought, why not have this be something that was documented? August never would have thought about this because he didn't even know about the competition before he passed away. And so I am grateful to be someone who's living to see this other chapter of August's legacy, and sad that he's not here with us.
Yes. Well, that leads me to Fern. In the mix of the directors and Constanza, can you talk about what drew you to this, to August Wilson's work, and this mix of not only just storytelling, but the competition, and how you wanted to make sure you mix that up a little bit differently?
Right. My real exposure to August's work was making the film. I saw Fences, and that was really the first time I saw his work. And so for me, my entry point into the film was acting. I wanted to explore acting in a setting where people actually understood it and understood the power of it, the process of it. And I just thought that was the film would be a really good opportunity to do that. So learning about August and learning about his work and his legacy for me was such an eye-opening experience. And it was the great takeaway, my great personal takeaway as far as my involvement with the film.
Okay, so we'll bring in Julius, can bring the back end of this all together. At what point in this production, because you and your wife, Viola Davis, are executive producers with your JuVee production company, where do you two come into play on the project as executive producers?
Well, listen, everything August is everything Viola, okay? And Jim came to me, Jim called me, reached out, and we couldn't have been more excited. Obviously, we already have a relationship with Constanza, and we love August. And listen, all the big moments in Viola Davis's career have started with August Wilson. When you think about 7 guitars, and then you move to King Hedley II, and then you move to Fences, and then now Ma Rainey. So it's really defined a career in a way that just was a no-brainer for us to be a part of this, to be a part of August's legacy is something to be proud of and something to kind of keep pushing out there. Because as Jim so eloquently said a moment ago, August's work needs to be seen in the same way as some of our other great playwrights. And so we were just excited to be a part of this.
Great. Well, I will now swing it to Freedom, and you are one of the young people that is participating in the monologue competition. And one of the things that was striking to me, that it seems almost fitting for a young man named Freedom to be a part of this August Wilson Monologue Competition, considering that Wilson's plays are a continuum of experiences highlighting the impact of slavery on succeeding generations of African Americans, and that the assertion he has given that America belongs to all of us. And I wanted to find out from you, Freedom, where did you find your sense of belonging in that, the words and in the characters that you connected to in Wilson's work?
Well, I think first and foremost, I found a sense of familiarity because a lot of the words in August Wilson's plays sound like my family members, sound like my aunts and my uncles, and that was so rare because usually a lot of the work they had us working on in school or anytime I did like a theatrical endeavor, it takes some warming up to. It's kind of antiquated, it feels like a lot of the time. But this just felt natural. It was something that I kind of got to click into, and I didn't have to work so hard or get so heady. It's all feeling with August Wilson, which is great. You can just ride the words and follow them to wherever they lead you. So yeah, I would say I found a sense of belonging in the familiarity of the words.
Okay. Well, I want to kind of piggyback on Julius's comment about legacy and ask you, Constanza, as someone who has a career of your own, you are an artist, a producer, and a costume designer, but so much of your work now seems to, at least through your biography, seems to be centered on guiding and cementing August Wilson's compilation of plays in our American lexicon of history and culture. And as executor of your late husband's estates, were you specified particular guidelines from Mr. Wilson about what you wanted to fulfill? You spoke a little bit about the fact that the film may not have been something he would have envisioned, but how are you working to best express the opportunities to display Wilson's contributions through the American theater?
Well, what a great question. Thank you. First, let me say that August Wilson is my most favorite playwright in the whole wide world. And it, just, I am biased, I guess. But before he passed away, I knew that I was going to be in charge of his legacy, in charge of his estate, in charge of his intellectual property. And at that time, I didn't know how big a charge that was going to be, how much responsibility, but I did ask him a couple of questions before. And, I said, what about this? What about that? And at one point he just said, he took out his hands like this and he said, in so many words, I give it to you. And I will never forget that moment because it just brought me to the center of what love is, what trust is, what a continuation of precious gifts that was. And I think that he also knew how much I cared about his work and how much I respected. And, I know the plays pretty much backwards and forwards at this point. My work with the estate has been one of always trying, there was a period at first when I thought, well, what would August do? And what would August do with this? And how would August make up his mind about this? He had an amazing moral compass, but we have entered, as the years roll by, we have entered a time where more and more I'm just making decisions on what is best for the history books, what is best for us all as Americans to embrace these stories, what is best, who are the people who I lean on to continue this giving gifts to the people in the world. So that's been my process, and I continue to feel extremely fortunate and extremely grateful that August bestowed these gifts upon me.
Thank you. And, I wanted to also ask you, Julius, because beyond being an executive producer, and you mentioned how much August Wilson's work means to Viola, but you are also a theater actor. And so you hinted at it a little bit earlier, but what distinguishes August Wilson's work from his playwright contemporaries of the 20th century? Can you articulate a little bit more about what?
I go back to what Freedom said. There's a familiarity. I mean, we know these people. And so it's easy. August wrote this stuff like jazz. I mean, there wasn't supposed to be one thing left out. You don't change it around. You don't push it around. You just follow it. Like with Shakespeare, we have iambic pentameter. With August Wilson, we have jazz. And when those words flow, they just get inside of you. So there's something about these folks that are so familiar that when you embody those characters, they just come alive. And a lot of times people say, well, August's work is foolproof. You don't have to be that great. August is so great that those words can make you great. So if you really step up in any kind of way, because those words are so precious and so beautiful, they just sing. They really do. You trust the words. You trust what August wrote, and you're going to live in that moment or moments.
Well, I was actually going to ask Freedom about the rhythm of August's work and his writing, because it's been likened to both jazz and in the film, it was likened to blues music, which come from the same place. But as a young artist, I was wondering, how are you able to find the rhythm in his words? I was curious more about the process that you went through in creating the characters or embodying the characters that you did in your monologue.
Well, I've heard so far August Wilson be likened to, or at least the same league as Eugene O'Neill and Arthur Miller. But I mean, I think another comparison would be to Shakespeare. I mean, I took a lot of the same approaches I would take to classical text to August Wilson's text, because I think they both deserve that amount of work, because they're just as equally as dense, I think, if you really search for it. So, I mean, yeah, going through just to throw some off the top, going through like what other characters say about the character that I am playing. Everything that my character says about themselves, their history, their wants, their dreams, all of that, and treating them on the page like you would someone in real life, having a conversation with them, and swearing that you'll do right by their story when you perform their words. So, yeah.
And Julius, I also wanted to ask you, the wonderful thing about this particular competition that we see in the film is that it features young people of varying racial groups and ethnic groups. And as our country continues to grapple with issues of race and ethnicity and even religious freedoms, how can the work of August Wilson serve as a balm as we reckon with this idea of healing?
Well, you know what? August was about authenticity, right? Then you live in authenticity. You live in who these people were, where they were from, what connections they had to other folks around them, their environment. And we're living in a time now where a nation needs healing. And when you see these folks in August Wilson plays, they seem so familiar. So it transcends race. Even though these folks happen to be African-American, you kind of know somebody like some of those folks. You just do, I kind of know that guy's kind of like somebody. And so I think the more people identify, the more August's work is out there and people identify these characters as just human beings. The thing that we all have in common is that we're all human. Forget about race. We're all human. And so that is the thing that I think will bring us all full circle, is, through August's work and through these characterizations, you get to see people whole and real and authentic.
Jim, I wanted to ask this next question of you as director. How did John Legend become involved as an executive producer, and what were some of the decisions behind including some of his music at the end credits?
I'll tell you, I'll answer that in 1 second, but I just did to jump on Julius's back for a second about identification. I think it's really important because as someone who's not African American, I mean, my first experience with August Wilson was as a father, was at Washing Fences, was this father-son play. And so my identification became obviously not, racial, although I certainly, have, appreciated it then and I think have grown in that regard. But he struck me so powerfully in my own way, and, and the themes and the familial themes were so powerful that that, like Julia said, it transcends race, which I think is part of why he's so important from a historical and cultural perspective. As far as the song goes, Fernando and I really wanted. We were very clear that we did not want source music. We wanted a composed score. We didn't want the source music because there was no reason to have songs interrupting August's work, right? I mean, August, as everyone has said here already, that August's work is musical in itself. So that meant that we were going to have a composed movie with no source, which then put extra pressure on what was going to happen at the end of the movie. And we really wanted a song, that would be inspirational. And that gets you to, as far as I'm concerned, sort of the most inspirational songwriter going today, which is John Legend. Turns out that John Legend and Mike Jackson also were producers on Jitney on Broadway. So, we knew that they had, a history with August, obviously cared about August to have jumped into a Broadway show like that. And so that sort of became, that's how we, that's why the approach was made. And obviously we wanted them to be part of the team, not just from a songwriting perspective, but part of the team. Once John saw the movie, saw the cut, he wanted to do the song, but we wanted them to be part of the team regardless, but the song, came in famously late because John's very busy and he did not decide to actually write the song despite being part of the team until he saw a cut of the movie. So we were actually waiting. We'd gotten into Sundance with a temp song and we were actually had to go to the final mix. And we were, at this point, I think we were about a half an hour from going to the final mix and we still didn't have the song. And Mike, who's like the greatest guy in the world, just kept on saying like, dude, just relax. It's like gonna be fine. Just like stop stressing. And then the song hits like a half an hour before we're supposed to go. And I just heard it and I just started just crying, tears. I mean, the song was so great, so perfect. And we were, it's one of those moments, which I'll never forget where, we had worked so long on that film, and then to have that come in on top of it was just an incredibly magical moment. So it was like it was really incredible. Last thing, then I'll stop talking, which is we should also make sure we give a shout out to Freedom because he's at Juilliard and we're at Lincoln Center and no one's said anything about that. So that's a pretty big deal, and and it's like this is his home. This is so all props to him.
Well, I wanted to follow up with Constanza. This really does feel like, watching the film and even in this conversation, a love letter to August Wilson in a way. Would you agree? How would you characterize it?
I love that way of characterizing it. I think that it really cements in people's minds August's contribution to the American theater. It really adds the perspective of the young people. What August wrote was his truth. He wrote what he felt, what he had experienced himself, and to have those words that he put on the paper be then taken up like a baton for young people to keep running with that baton, with just with all of their truths, with all of their experiences, with all of their dreams, wants, and hopes. And, they're at a particular point in time, just graduating from high school, where they have the future ahead of them. And they, I also wanted to give a shout out to Freedom. He's one of those that really took that baton and is running. And I thank you for that. They are going places. What August put on the paper too was love. He put the understanding of humanity on the page. He put, on a grander scale, he definitely was speaking of universal truths, but also on an African American scale, where he put his love for his mother on the paper. He paid homage to the old guys who were talking and discussing things in the cigar stores, in the barbershops. He is basically celebrating all African American culture in all of his plays. So a love letter to say, August Wilson matters and August Wilson continues, August Wilson forever. Yes, I agree with all of those things.
Great. And I just wanted to make sure that that the audience knows that you can submit your questions via the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. We'll be going to audience Q&A in about 4 minutes or so. So queue up your questions and I'll ask that to the panel. But Freedom, since Jim made mention of Juilliard, you got ahead of me, Jim.
Sorry about that.
I was like, darn it. But can you talk a little bit about Juilliard and your experiences there, and just having been part of the competition and kind of the trajectory of this legacy that you're taking with you in New York and around in the East Coast and beyond?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Juilliard as an institution had been such an inspiration for me since 8th grade. It was part of the reason why I decided to pursue this seriously. I knew there was an institution for it that was like hailed and respected. And so it was just a dream come true to actually to get in, and the training there, I mean, is incredible. I mean, it lives up to the reputation. I get to do what I love for most of every day with people who take it just as seriously and are just as passionate about it as I am. And it's like, that's like, what else can you ask for? As for the legacy, being a part of that, I mean, like Constanza said, I mean, like, it's just cool to have this documented. Like, it's just proof that this happened and this is going to continue to happen. And it's like, it feels like, I don't know, one step on a legacy that is still unfolding. And I'm so happy to be able to be a part of it in such an early stage of it. And yeah, I mean, it'll always, I mean, everywhere I go, I mean, I do August Wilson pieces for auditions, for shows that I'm doing. Like, I'm always trying to do his work, because I mean, it's like a love letter to us, to his actors. I mean, you can pick through any piece in the catalog and like, you can live it fully, and it works great for audition pieces. So like, I'm honored to have been a part of this. Yeah.
So, Fern, I wanted to ask you, what you most of your work has been in editing, and so I was curious, what are some of your favorite takeaways from the film? And also, as an editor, what were some of the cutting room floor moments that didn't make it into the final cut that you found most difficult to leave out of the narrative?
I think one of my favorite takeaways is seeing all these young people being so passionate and so joyful about the craft of acting and about learning about August. I think that's something that people can take that away from the film. As far as what got cut out, I have a philosophy that's like reduce without being reductive, right? And you get closer to the truth that way. But if you don't cut out things that you fall in love with, you're not really doing the work as an editor, right? So I have to say the raw Viola interview is mind blowing. It is mind blowing. I mean, the way she talks about August, the characters, the plays, and then the way she talks about acting, it's just I've seen it 100 times. I think just the raw interview, not to at first to take notes, but then just to like learn, like going to class. It's very powerful. And then we had a character that we loved who didn't make the film because the film just it had to come down in length, and we lost the whole character, and we invested a lot of time in her, and she was a wonderful character, and it was one of those really heartbreaking decisions to have to do that. And but at the end we had to lose a whole character instead of watering down too much of the other characters, right? So that was tough, but it's part of the job, that's part of the editing, tough part of editing, I think, any project.
Yeah. And I'm going to make my last two questions for Constanza and Jim. Constanza, since COVID, the theaters have been dark, and I'm curious how you continue to move forward with the August Wilson Monologue Competition, and what do you envision for the future of the competition?
Yeah, it's so hard. One way or another, the August Wilson Monologue Competition is going to go forward. Right now, we're also thinking, how can we incorporate as many cities as want to join, but still provide that same kind of attention to training and coaching, and how can we manage a greater amount of young people? We're very, very much interested in continuing, but I think that there will have to be some restructuring in order for its longevity and for its health and for the future. So COVID definitely has put a big damper on everything, because the competition was also meant for it to be live performance and not have it be on any virtual platform. So we're just, trudging through and believing that August will prevail, and that in the future, this is going to be something that grows for many generations to come.
Mm. And Jim, what are you hoping? You're not only a fan of August's work, but now having been so steeped in it with this competition, what are you hoping that fans take or film goers take away from this particular project?
I hope that they take away a few things. The first is, of course, is August's legacy, first and foremost, and that he belongs at the very top of the pantheon of American theater and American culture. So I think that's certainly number one. I think that number two is that arts education desperately matters in this country, and I think it gets short shrift. It's something I always am concerned about. As a father of two, I think about it a lot and have thought about it a lot. And I think that we can't lose sight of our legacies and our cultural legacies, particularly at a time when there's so much animosity and vitriol, which is and false information, which passes as everyday norms. And I think the last thing is don't sleep on the youth. I mean, don't sleep on on people like freedom, and not the freedom of that's at Juilliard and is sitting here so confidently today, but the freedom that was a junior in high school when he did this competition, and and you could see the talent, but also the intelligence and the joy and his and Callie's and Nia's and Cody's and Aaron's and Gerardo's ability to embrace the future and without the kinds of doubts that sometimes someone like me has. And I think that's for me, and I think that Fernando feels the same way. That's been our greatest joy in doing that. One of our greatest joys in doing this film, and certainly one of our real takeaways. And the lessons that we learned were lessons that we learned from them, as well as lessons from Costanza and Julius, and of course August.
Well, we could probably talk about this a lot longer, but we do have the audience Q&As, and we have our first question from Peg Mastriani, and she commented, "I love the documentary, thanks to all of you. I couldn't help wondering how the talented young people we saw profiled have been managing during the COVID crisis. Those budding young careers were hit with a big roadblock last March. Do we have any updates on, we're now talking to Freedom, but can we speak to what's going on with the others or some of the others?" Freedom, you can start with your own. Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously classes are no longer in person, so they've moved online to Zoom, which is different, but I mean, we're still getting a quality education. I mean, voice work is voice work. Text work is text work, regardless of where you are. So it's been a big adjustment, but it's still, I'm still getting to do what I love, even if it is modified. So it's been great. Well, that's an overstatement. It has not been great, but it hasn't been terrible. Okay. I'm not sure if I can speak on like Nia or Gerardo.
I can take a bit of a crack. They're all doing sort of extraordinarily well, actually. I mean, Nia's at USC and doing really well, and Gerardo's at Carnegie Mellon, and Callie is at NYU, nearby to Freedom, and Aaron is pursuing music in North Carolina, and Cody's at Illinois, Chicago. So I mean, everybody is. I mean, it's just an astonishing group, and I'm lucky enough, and Fernando, we're lucky enough to keep up with them, and I think that Callie is already got herself an internship, is she going to be working with, she's going to be working with somebody, is she going to be working for you, Julius? What's going on, or no?
Put in to be one of the interns, and so
yeah, exactly, yeah.
And stuff, but obviously, as Freedom was saying, as alluded to with COVID, nobody's in the office right now, but hopefully when things open, we can get back to that. We're going to welcome her with open arms to come in and learn some.
And then I'm going to grab her next.
Sounds like she's got a lifelong career ahead of her.
You know what, they all do. That's what's so beautiful.
Yeah. Constanza, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you hope people will take from the film, because this has to be an interesting, not only executive producing challenge or labor of love, but also a personal one. And so I'm wondering what you would like people to take from it.
I do have a daughter, August, and my daughter, who's just a little older than Freedom and the rest of the kids featured in the film. And I think the value and their contribution to our society, to our all of our lives, our connectedness. I think that what Jim said, we should not sleep on that generation. I don't think we should sleep on that generation, but also on people of color. The arts brings out the best in people, period. And, you know, I think that, you know, all of these kids featured in the film, their lives took a whole other turn because August Wilson wrote these words. It opened up doors. The woman the young actress that is shown also in the film, who was in Once on This Island, you know, her whole life also took a different turn. Even if these young people are not going to become actors, they have had a trip to New York. They've had a whole other set of possibilities open up in their lives. You know, there's other jobs in the theater, there's other jobs in the arts than just being an actor, you know, costume designer, other kinds of designers. So I think more than anything, of course, yes, the power of August's words, but also the impact of the arts on young people's lives. I think that is one of my main places of interest. Think about that one teacher that the English teacher that is also in the film that told Cody about, you know, this competition, and he was an English teacher, but you know, he's one of the heroes of the film for me. You know, he said, boom, you know, check this out. And it became just a whole universe. So that's for me the takeaway.
Well, Freedom, what would you like people to take away from it? Because you're the generation that this film is speaking to in large part. What do you want young people to take away from it?
I would say that all of the opportunities are out there and you just got to seize them. Like, or yeah, that the possibilities are there, and you just got to take that effort to go and find them and achieve them. Like it's awesome that Cody had an English teacher who introduced him to the competition. It was awesome that I had people like Viola Davis, who I admired since I was a child. I remember I watched her in Doubt in middle school opposite Meryl Streep and was like, okay, how did she do that? Where did she go? And then that instilled Juilliard for me. And then that led to Chicago, which led to August, you know what I mean? So just like look, it sounds cliche, but like if you can dream it, you can achieve it, that kind of thing. And this documentary shows that off in all its glory. So.
And Fern, any last thoughts from you on what you'd like to see people take away from it, or any other comment that you'd like to make about the film as we prepare to close out?
Right. I'd like to point out just the importance of just having passion, right? And to me, it's really exemplified in how Freedom transformed his bedroom, right? And his bedroom was, and every square inch of his room was covered in something he was passionate about. Like even from like his very first play, his very first headshot, you know, and like what really blew me away was that he had a quote of Stephen McKinley Henderson from the Juilliard commencement speech. But the whole time I'm thinking, like, who watches that online? You know, like who's starting watching that? Like, I love the passion, I love it, and I wanted to champion it, I wanted to show it. And I always wanted to be an artist from a very young age. I mean, like, could remember, that's all I ever wanted to do. And I never thought it was like something that you were necessarily like proud to want to be an artist, because I come from like a really working class family. My mom cleans houses, my dad puts up wallpaper, you know, being an artist wasn't like part of the conversation, right? And I always wanted to do that. And I fought my whole life to find a niche to do that. And, you know, the part that always brings me, that moves me, there's a lot of parts in the film that move me, but when Viola says, you know, in a world that lacks in compassion, you know, it's honorable to want to be an artist, right? And I thought she was just speaking to me when she said that, and people, specifically like August Wilson, like he provides us the material, he provides us a path forward to explore that side of us that you know, that sometimes we need guidance in exploring.
And Julius, I know that you mentioned earlier all the August Wilson projects that Ms. Davis has been in and continues to be in. And before we came to screen, you mentioned all the awards that she's now getting for Ma Rainey. So congratulations to her for that. But I'm wondering, are there any other upcoming August Wilson projects that you're going to be involved in?
Well, you know, I would love to do August. Listen, that's the thing that's great about August Wilson for a man of my age. I could do one play and play 3 different roles in the same play. You know what I mean? It's just a plethora of roles in any one of those plays. Obviously, you know, opportunity presents itself. I'd be more than happy to step into that work, because that work is amazing. And it would be a beautiful opportunity. I think the thing that Constanza has going with Denzel and Denzel's commitment, he and Todd Black's commitment to August's work, that we're going to see these plays become films. And so that's a really encouraging sign. And I'm hoping that I get an opportunity to audition for one of those and perhaps snag one. It would really be good.
Well, that sounds like a good place to end it. Julius, Jim, Freedom, Constanza, Fernando, thank you all so very much for participating this evening. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing, each of you, to continue the brilliant, amazing work that August Wilson started. It's been such a pleasure to talk to all of you.
Thanks so much for having us.
You too, Janice.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.